Pero aquí estoy con el niño y contigo, pero bueno.
Well, he must knowing about wine.
I love the great Chardonnay.
You love Chardonnay?
I love that. Oh my God, I love Chardonnay. Really.
You love Chardonnay.
I love
Everybody likes Chardonnay, no?
Yeah, I like Chardonnay, and the other wine that I really enjoy is Merlot.
Yeah, absolutely. Great wines. Great wines. I
Yeah,
love
unfortunately,
Chardonnay. That's really
I love Chardonnay. Yeah, really.
and that's great.
Mad, I have a question for you.
Absolutely.
This is kind of a personal question.
Sure.
You really love wine. How do you take control that you drink wine but you don't have a problem with the alcohol?
Great question.
How do you know that it is enough? And that's in Colombia, a lot of people is drinking wine every day because we are at the quarantine, so they drink a bottle of wine every day, and what in any moment they can become alcoholic or having a problem with alcohol. So how do you take control of this situation? How many cups of wines can you drink in a day? I don't know. How could you control?
It's a great question. It's a great question, and I don't want you to think that Colombia or Colombians are any different than anybody else in the world. There's the same situation in the United States, and it really becomes a self-regulation. You sort of have to know your limits. I'm certainly not a doctor, but there are people that or psychiatrists, people that have addictive personalities, and maybe it becomes buying things, maybe it becomes other behaviors that create that. But I've gone 2, 3, 4 weeks not having any. We might have 5 or 6 nights in a row. We'll have a glass or two of wine. We've got a wine preservation system where we can kind of cap off, put a plug in it and take the air out of it and enjoy it the next day. It's ingrained in our life, and people know us as the wine people. So we'll go to parties and, we'll bring some wine. I'm going to a golf trip and I've told the guys I'll ship some down. But I also know, when it's enough. I run by a rule because I travel professionally. I'm on the road all the time, and it's hotel, airplane, dinner, lunch, some other stuff, meetings, and anybody that works for me. And I've had quite a extensive career managing sales forces, and I would like to make sure my guys understand we don't ever want them to be that guy. And it's very much a colloquialism, and it doesn't maybe translate really well. So bear with me when I explain it. When you go to an event, a social event, and there are customers or vendors or other employees around, I want everybody to have a great time. But no one to stop. When we'll go out for dinner with customers and we'll take them to a beautiful dinner and steaks, and there'll be wine flowing and drinks beforehand, and we get all done and we get back to the hotel, the bar's this way and the elevator's that way, we go that way. Because I don't want my people to be talked about the next day as that guy. Did you see that guy last night? There's no need to do that. So it becomes I guess I get a little external influence on myself and others about doing that. And it's a tricky slope. And I have worked with some folks who've had the drinking problem, and it's tough to do that. And I guess you want to call it a cute story, an interesting story. We moved to this area 10 years ago in upstate New York. It's beautiful. I wish you all could see, just how nice it is. But there's a nice restaurant in town, and they've got a nice wine selection, and they brought wine in for me. And we had it. It was wonderful. And the owner was there and like, "Oh, Ed, you really need to try some of this wine." It's like, no, I'm okay. So no, Eddie, I'm telling you, you really need to try this wine. It's unbelievable. And he goes, "I don't drink." Like, and then he pulled me aside and said he had a drinking problem and he had to stop. He owns a restaurant, and I still to this day, and it's like 10 years, and it's a bruise. and I feel like I pressed a bruise. And I tell folks that work for me, you don't remember the things that you did right, but you certainly remember the things you did wrong. And you learn from those mistakes. And I'm super hypersensitive. If somebody said they don't want one or have it, we'll go to these restaurants. So we were telling a story earlier about sending wine back to the staff to try. And I always, ask, hey, do you enjoy wine? And some will say, no, it's really not my thing. And it gives them kind of the out to say, no, I don't drink wine. And others are like, oh yeah. I'm like, all right, so we'll make sure that we share this with you guys when we're done with the meal. That's a great question. It really is. And it's one that you really have to watch yourself. Fortunately, that's not a genetic issue for me. Thank God. I mean, I could end up just living in the room behind me and you could find me on the floor.
But I think if you love wine, it's very easy to have drinking problems. If it's an addictive personality, it's very easy, no?
My daughter's in the wine business, and when we go out to visit Napa, the last thing in the world she wants to drink is wine.
Yeah, enough.
She's like, she'll drink champagne, ciders, a mixed drink, get her a cocktail, get her a fancy glass of champagne. But, you say, hey, let's drink some wine. She's like, I've drank wine professionally all day, and it's not that they're drinking, but they've got to open it. They've got to smell it. They're around it. They're making it. And it's like they some of them are like, they just don't want to drink anymore when they're done.
Okay, more questions?
Oh yeah, I have one.
Sure.
My mom is a wine lover, but well, I don't know how to difference between a good wine and a medium or regular quality of wine, because all the bottles are the same one. The only thing that change is the brand. That's it. So how can I difference of what makes a wine unique or different?
That's a great question, Juan. And fortunately for us, everybody on the call and everybody now, we all have, or most everybody, you've got computers or phones or whatever, that there's a proliferation. There's a lot of applications and websites that you can go and check. One of the things you've got to be careful when you go to those websites, that's somebody else's opinion. And that's an interesting path to go down. Wine does not necessarily be ranked with price. There are some very, very expensive bottles I've had that I just didn't enjoy. So please don't ever think it's purely a function of cost equals quality, because that isn't necessarily the case. And it happened. We have some wine that we haven't put away yet. This is a $35 bottle of wine, and it's one of the best bottles of wine, and we have a bunch of it. And this is probably a $150 bottle of wine, and it's kind of comparable in quality. So it becomes a personal preference. I would research it. I'd find out the type, the varietal she likes, whether it's a Merlot or a Cabernet or a blend, and then take a look at what's available. There are some great wines from South America. I mean, there's unbelievable. So the price points, and bringing U.S. wines into Colombia probably has a fairly high tariff and high freight costs, so it'd probably be a little bit more expensive. I tend to find when I've been in Central and South America that European wines are very good and very reasonably priced. And it's not a function of price. Do a little bit of research on it and check it out. And that's kind of the other thing that you find, and spend a couple minutes talking about it. In the wine world, in the fine wine world, there are wine critics, people who write about wine. And they have subscriptions, or they have magazines that you subscribe to, or websites. So they'll go to Napa Valley and they'll have tables full of wine, and they'll just try them and take notes. And then they'll put scores out there and say, they think it's a 100-point wine, or a 99-point wine, or a 50-point wine. And people take great stock in that. And I'm sort of indifferent on that philosophy, because that's one person's opinion. And if his taste in wine isn't the same as mine, he's telling me that this is a great wine. That's his opinion. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's not necessarily.
Ana Torres, please.
Yes, thank you, Ernesto. Matt, dedicating yourself professionally to drink wine, Do you think it has had an impact on your health?
You know, again, another good question. I do get a physical every year. One of the things I do make sure they do is check my liver cultures, because that's very important. I do take some supplements, milk thistle, and a few other cleanse to make sure that I do it. I try to drink a lot of water every day, and I try truly not to overindulge in wine. So I do make sure that I stay healthy. I played pickleball this morning. I saw Ernesto. He and I had a conversation. I had just come off the tennis court. I'll play again tomorrow afternoon. I play golf. I have a exercise bike. So I try to stay reasonably fit, or at least doing something, 4 days, 5 days a week to stay in shape and not just sit around and drink. And I do have a day job, and I do have to function. But we do make sure that when we're entertaining or have people over, that we're very careful about how much wine we drink.
Okay, we have another student that just came in. His name
Oh,
is
great.
Giovanni. Okay, Giovanni, please, short introduction. And if you have any questions to Matt, please do so. Giovanni? Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Giovanni.
It's a pleasure being in this meeting. I have some problems with my internet connection. Therefore, I not have clear. I have just a few minutes of connection in the last
Sure.
section, and I'm really don't have clear what is the topic of the 10 you are working on.
Well, he's talking about wine. Do you have any question about wine? He knows Matt is an expert on wine, on Napa Valley, all that. So if you have a question.
Any questions on the United States, Giovanni? I've traveled to all the states. I have a home in California. I also have a home in New York. Wine's my hobby and passion, and I try to do a little bit professionally. My daughter's in the wine business, and I also am a vice president of a PVC pipe company.
Okay, well, it's an excellent HB. I don't know. I think this is a topic related to what do you do? Do you work in web sector, in web?
Well, my day job is vice president of a PVC pipe company. So I have sales, customer service, transportation, logistics, and production planning responsibility.
Okay.
I've been doing that for 30 years. I've been working for this company for the last 10. We're east of the Mississippi River, so our primary shipping area is Florida, the state of Florida, to the state of Maine, including the Eastern Canadian provinces. And I spend the other chunk of my time traveling to Napa Valley and being involved in the wine business.
Okay.
Primarily drinking and enjoying and sharing it on social media. I don't ever want to think I'm an influencer, but we certainly make sure that the people whose wine who we like, we post pictures of it and talk about it.
Matt, in your opinion, which one is the country that produces the best wine? France, Chile.
I'm an equal opportunity wine critic and snob, so I like wine from everywhere. I'm very partial to. I travel. Before the pandemic, we traveled all through Italy, so I don't know a lot about Italian wine, but I like it. I love French wine, especially from the Burgundy region. So I like Chardonnay. So Carolina was telling she likes Chardonnay. I love French Chardonnay. Obviously buying a house in Napa Valley. I want to support my people in my second hometown and enjoy that. We like Pinot Noir from California and also from France. The Chilean wines, there's actually a Siegal winery, the same spelling as my name, in Chile, which is kind of cool. And I'd like to it someday before I set sail to go down and say hello to those folks. Argentinian Malbecs are delicious. Australian wines are great. If you get a chance to drink South African wines, they're unbelievable. I've had some Greek wines lately. There's a Lebanese winery called Chateau Musser, Mussar. Beautiful wines from the Bekaa Valley. between Israel and Lebanon. It's really, really special wine. There's so many countries. There's a guy on Twitter who I've been in a conversation with. He's really pushing Moldavian wines. There's a varietal, because the Finger Lakes are really close to us too, by the way. We're like an hour, I keep pointing, but to the northwest of us are the Finger Lakes of New York, and they're glacial lakes. So when the glaciers came back, they dug these really narrow and super deep lakes so they don't freeze over in the winter. So they keep the shoreline really warm so they can let grapevines grow there. So it's really kind of a special area. But they don't grow red grapes there very well because they don't ripen, because we don't have a long enough growing season in upstate New York. So there's a varietal called Saperavi, which is a kind of a obscure grape varietal from the country of Georgia, which is now Moldavia and part of Ukraine and in that vicinity, that does really well. So there's wine from all over the world.
Okay, but if you have to pick one bottle of one country, which one would you
pick? You're not being fair, Anna. Oh my God.
You haven't answered my question. I just want
I know.
one
I'm trying politely not to do that. I laugh, and my wife's probably listening to me upstairs, and people that I travel with, I call them desert island wines. So again, an American colloquialism that I think it takes a little bit of explanation. If I were stranded on a desert island, if they put me on a desert island and said, you're never going to be able to get off this island, what would you take with you? So we always make fun of a desert island wine. So I try to find a wine that I never get tired of. And truly, my dear friend Dave Miner, and I'd encourage you to check his story. He's got a really interesting story. Makes a wine called Oracle, and it's a red blend. So it's got Cabernet Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, and Malbec in it. And each year the blend's a little bit different. So it evolves so much year after year, even the different vintages. So each year's wines taste a little bit different. And that particular year that I like, it changes every year. It gets better. So that would probably be my desert island red wine. And I really like white Burgundies from France. And I love Napa Valley Chardonnays. I've got a bunch of them here, but I've really been falling in love with French Chardonnays. So I probably would take those two on a desert island and be happy.
Okay, desert island.
Sorry, I was trying not to get in trouble for picking.
That's a good example.
Hey, Matt,
Yeah.
I have a question. Is that a very expensive hobby or passion? I think you spend a lot of money on that, no?
Yeah, my wife thinks I spend too much money on it, and that's a conversation we always have. But yeah, one of the funny stories, and it can get, and it's same thing, it can get out of hand, and you've got to make sure that you stay within your budget, you stay within your lane of what you can afford, because you can end up running around. Like if you pick cars, if you're a car collector and you know like this type of car, but the guys you go with like Porsches and Ferraris, and you want to keep up with them, and you start spending more money than you have on cars. Same thing with wine. I've got some friends who are on these mailing lists, and Ernesto, it's obscene the amount of money they spend on wine. So we try to be careful. When I first started getting into wine many years ago, I'd find wine that we'd have at a restaurant, and I'd go find it and I'd hide it. I'd squirrel it away. And Nancy would say, hey, these people are coming over, let's have some wine. And I'd run to the wine shop. And she'd say, what about that wine you got under the bed? Oh, no, we can't drink that wine. That's special wine. So then we took our first trip to Napa Valley, and about the second day, probably the fifth or sixth winery overall we went to, we sat in the parking lot and looked at each other and said, we are never going to hoard wine again. We're never going to have special secret wine. It's so much good wine made in the world that it's crazy to have a bottle in there. And I tell any of our friends that come over, or any people that I've even just acquaintances or people we've met, if there's something in there that you want, that you like, that you covet, you need to have it. That leads me to a story that I heard at Cushing. So this is a 40-year-old story. Do you remember Robin Reams?
Yes, I remember.
Okay, so Robin went to school with Ernesto and I, and she was an American, a young lady from America, but she lived in Saudi Arabia, and her family worked for Raytheon, and they were a big defense contractor. So they were providing military stuff for the Saudi government, and they lived on a compound. So, fenced in area, going through some stuff where they lived and went to school, and the company sent them to the United States to go to school. She told a story about her sister going to a horse show out in Saudi and saw this horse and absolutely fell in love with the horse. And she was just kind of blah, 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 blah. And this guy comes over and goes, I understand you really like this horse. She goes, oh my God, this horse is amazing. He goes, it's yours. I mean, she couldn't take it. I mean, he didn't know. And he told her, if I have a possession that somebody covets as much or more than I do, they should deserve to have it. And that story is 40 years old, and it's always stuck with me. And I try, I probably don't have a lot in common with a Saudi prince by any stretch of the imagination, but it always stuck with me that if there's something here in this wine collection or there that somebody likes or has heard of and has never had it or had it and loved it, we need to drink it. We need to make that memory. I have a dear friend who's a dentist friend of mine, and he loves this one winery wine. So I save it for him, and he can't believe that I'll do that. It's like, no, Nancy and I are going to drink it on Sunday night, open up this ridiculous bottle of wine. So his 50th birthday is coming up, and you know very well that that's the first thing I'm going to do is grab one of those bottles of wine and take it to him and make sure he has it for his 50th birthday. So you can get out of, to answer your question, sure, they can get out of control and you can spend way too much money. So Nancy and I have a pretty good system of, if we see an email coming through, we want to buy something, we talk about it before we pull the trigger. Sometimes I don't always check.
And Matt, I have a question.
Sure.
I see you have your storage of wine behind you, and I wanted to ask, like, how is the proper way to store wine? Because I know some people have like wine fridge, or they have like dark rooms or closets. I don't know what's the correct.
That's
And why happens that?
Sure. Anna, that's a great question. And wine likes cool and damp. It likes high humidity, and it likes temperatures from 58 to 62. Some people keep it at 55, and that's really to prevent evaporation and slow the aging down, because wine will evaporate through the cork if it's super dry. We're very fortunate living in upstate New York that we have a beautiful cellar basement to our home. Our home's built on a hill, and the main living area is up above us, but we've got this huge basement that's a walkout. So what we do is we have a refrigeration unit that keeps the room at 58 degrees and at a constant humidity. People can keep it in a closet because you want to keep it still and you want to keep it dark. And if you can keep it, again, in air conditioning and keep it, we used to store, when we lived in Houston, we didn't have a basement. Houston, Texas, everything's built on a slab because of the water table so high that the minute you dig down to do a basement, the water comes up. So everything's built on a slab. We did not have the beautiful basement that we have here. So like you said, we have wine refrigerators that we stored. We also stored it in our closets and under the bed because it was quiet and dark. So yeah, proper storage is 55 to 62 and about 60% humidity. But any place that you can keep it kind of not moving around and not in direct sunlight is really good. Because it ages. The corks are porous. The corks are designed to let a little bit of oxygen in to change the wine. The screw caps don't. When you put a screw cap on a wine, the day the wine's made is the way it's going to taste the day you drink it. This wine will change over time because of the cork that's used.
And that's the same reason why the wine is stored by its side, like
keep the cork wet.
Yeah.
You want to keep the cork wet so it stays enlarged and stays in that the neck of the bottle, so the wine doesn't leak out or the air doesn't get in there and dry the wine out.
Okay, because of the oxygen. Okay.
And some wines are made to age, Anna, and some aren't. That's another whole other, probably would need another 2-hour Zoom session to talk about that. But some wines are made to, especially French Bordeaux's and Burgundies, that you don't drink them as soon as you buy them. You put them in your cellar and you forget about them for 10 years. Most of the California wines behind us, they're ready to drink. There might be a few wines I would say, yeah, I might not necessarily want to drink that right now, but if you wanted to, sure, we'll try it. but pretty much I tell you that 75 or 80% of those wines are ready to go and ready to drink.
Nice. So having a vineyard is like having a chemistry laboratory.
There's a lot of that to it, and a lot of it's way beyond me. You know, it's that another. I apologize. I hope some of these little American or English colloquialisms are. It's like enjoying sausage. I love sausage. I don't necessarily like how it's made.
Okay.
You know, because a lot of the stuff that goes behind the scenes is way beyond me, and I try to understand it, and I understand the fermentation process and skin soaks and all that other stuff. But you know, it's some people tell you that they don't necessarily like how sausage is made, but they like the taste of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, well, David, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Matt, for instance, I have seen in some magazines and well, in some information that appropriate like quality for the grapes crops, it will be a weather or a land with not too much humidity. And
Mhm,
for instance, here in Colombia, in one department that is called Boyacá,
mhm.
it's a department when it rains a lot. It's a really humid place. So, and in there is a wine crop. It's a one place when they grow grapes for making wine. And how could be that good appropriate or not for the wine?
You know, the interesting thing is different varietals of grapes. So Cabernet Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Syrah, Grenache, each do well in different climates. So a cooler region, the Pacific coast of California, does really well with Pinot Noir because it's kind of cool and damp all the time. You get this marine layer. You don't get a lot of hot sun beating on the grapes. You get this foggy. They call it the June gloom. It kind of stays foggy till about noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And they're thin-skinned grapes, and they kind of relish that climate. Cabernet grapes, which are these big, massive Cabernets, they love hot and dry. And, you know, they like warm days and cool nights. That's where they kind of get their moisture from, is when things cool down at night. So, you know, depending on what type of varietals are growing in that region, would be also dependent. The enemy of wine grapes are mildew and mold. And unlike the seedless grapes that you eat in the United States, we call them Thompson. That just happens to be the brand. I'm not quite sure what. They're just like table grapes. So your red and white table grapes. When you go to the Mercado, the berries are very loose and open. They're rarely are they super packed. You might get some that are packed. Wine grapes, the clusters are very, very tight. So if you get any kind of moisture inside, like if my knuckles were the grapes, if you get any moisture inside, it stays there and it gets moldy. So that's why they like the breeze. They like that dry air during the day to dry those grapes back out. And at night, that kind of beautiful, cool, foggy sits in on Napa Valley, and the skins pick up the moisture and the leaves do. But in the sun, and then during the day, the wind comes up, dries them out, the sunlight beats on them, and goes that way. So I would like to see it. And it's what you're going to do for me, Mr. Juan, is when I'm done, I'm going to go upstairs and check Google and look at Colombian wine grapes and see what's grown there, and see how they're doing and why they're doing it. So it's interesting to me, because too much water is also the enemy of grapes. And that's kind of a counterintuitive if you would think about it. Most of the wineries don't irrigate during the dry season. They'll drip, it's called drip irrigation. So you have these really little pieces of pipe, and they drip water down at the vines, at the base of the vines, to keep them alive barely. What grapevines like to do is go really far down into the earth to seek moisture, and they also get all these great minerals and nutrients from way down deep, and you get really intense flavors in the skin, because that's where all the flavor comes from. It's not really the juice, it's the skin contact that gets you the flavor. All grapes, 90% of the grapes grown in the world, when you squeeze them, the juice is clear. It's white. What gets the red color is when you squeeze the grapes and the juice comes out, and you leave the skins there, and then you let them set on there and ferment, and then you press them, and then you take the skins out, and the juice turns red. Rosé is barely touching it. So what you really want for those intense flavors, and don't forget, when you buy those table grapes, they're really big and juicy and they're delicious because they put a lot of water on them and they plump up. So basically what you're buying is water. right before they harvest them, they pump those vines full of water. The fruit plumps up, they cut it off, and when you weigh them in the Mercado, you're paying for the grapes, but you're really paying for a lot of water. With wine grapes, they're like the tip of your little finger. That's kind of a big wine grape. They're very small and intense, and they all have seeds in them. And the seeds, they'll leave the seeds in for quite a while, and that's what gives it the structure, the tannin. Like tea. The tea is a very tannic drink. That's why people put milk or cream or honey or lemon to take that tannin away, because it'll pucker your mouth when you drink just straight tea. So wine will do that too if you have too much of the seeds in there.
Okay. Any more questions, students? Matt, I have a question.
Sure.
Which is the most expensive wine you ever bought?
I was embarrassed to ask that question.
Oh, never be embarrassed, Anna. I should have told you. There's nothing embarrassing. The one I've had people buy wine that they've offered it to me that is ridiculously expensive. I think the most expensive wine I ever bought was probably Harlan Estates Magnum, was probably $1,000 US at a restaurant. The most expensive wine in the cellar is probably $200 or $300. There's only a few of them, but we have some that are that expensive. Most of them are $50 or less, $100 or less. My friend Dave Miner, for his 50th birthday, opened up basically priceless wines. I mean, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of wine. He's collected over the years. His family has been blessed. They were the founders of Oracle Software, and his uncle was partners with Larry Ellison, who founded Oracle. And Dave's wine cellar's 5 or 6 times the size of mine, and has just like crazy great wines. And I can send you some pictures of wines we've opened, and they were unbelievable. So yeah, it's kind of fun, and they're unicorns. It happens once in a lifetime that you get exposed to that. So yeah, we were in Alaska. He took me to fishing in Alaska one year, 5 or 6 years ago, and there's this restaurant called the Crow's Nest, and it's really at the Captain Cook Hotel in downtown Anchorage. And believe it or not, in Anchorage, Alaska, which if it's not the edge of the earth, you can see it from there, has an unbelievable wine cellar. I mean, these are $4,000 or $5,000 bottles of wine. And Dave's like, sure, why not? I'm like, huh, okay. I'm glad to have a glass with you. But yeah.
And you never drink whiskey or vodka?
I do. Oh no, I do. It's certainly not to the extent I'm looking over. I have a nice collection of bourbons. I just started drinking bourbons probably the last 2 or 3 years. Had not been exposed. My parents, my dad's passed away, and my mom's are nursing home, but my parents were single malt Scotch drinkers growing up, and I never developed a taste for that. I just started drinking bourbon. So I was never a big amber, like tequila and vodkas and gins I would enjoy. But I'm just starting to do that. And one of the other things I'm starting to drink now is sipping rum. And that's not something I was ever exposed to growing up or even as an adult. Probably I have a dear friend who started me on and gave me just a little glass of after dinner. We sat outside the fire pit of our house and brought some over, and I was blown away by the complexity and smoothness of it. So I've got 5 or 6 bottles of some just great rums that I'm enjoying now. So yeah, we switch it up. It's not all wine all the time, but do enjoy vodkas too. Again, everybody thinks I'm probably an alcoholic. Right? I don't have to drink, but I enjoy
We have only 5 more minutes left. I want
Sure.
to thank you very much. Very interesting, everything you have to say. And anything you need in Colombia, just let us know, and we're here to serve you. Whatever.
And I told you the other day, I love your brother. We'll do anything for you. And anybody that is working with you, studying with you, is a friend of mine.
Thank you.
If anybody needs anything, please let me know. Ernesto has all my contact information. Anybody comes to the U.S. that needs any tips or they're coming through New York or going to be in California, please let us know. We'd love to look after you and host you. But certainly if you have any questions at all, don't be embarrassed. And Anna, don't worry about it. You're not going to embarrass me. I don't embarrass easily. So it's not a problem. So if anybody has anything after the fact that they wish to ask, happy to answer them. Always try to get back to you pretty quickly.
Thanks, Matt.
I have the last question.
Thanks, Matt.
A good taster, a good wine tester always drink red wine
No.
or also red white wine or rosé.
So I love rosé wines. There's a region in France called Tavel, Tavel. All they make are rosé wines. They're spectacular. The Provence region down towards the Mediterranean makes amazing rosé wines. Napa is starting to do some great rosés. I will tell you, Anna, some of my erythral, earth-moving, life-changing moments have come from drinking white Burgundy. I think the French did this for 1,000 years. 1000 AD, somebody had the idea to plant Chardonnay grapes there, and they've just perfected it, and it's unbelievable. And I can't fathom how somebody knew to do that. And you drink this wine, you're like, oh my God, it's like amazing, and it's a white wine. So no, I'm all about all different ones, and I'm up for trying anything.
Another wine that I like is Riesling.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's what they grow here. The New York State's known for its Rieslings, and dry and semi-dry. So then we get again another hour-long conversation. Dry wines are all the sugars are fermented out.
Okay.
So there's no residual sugar. There's no sweetness. Then you start getting into some of the off-dry, semi-dry, semi-sweet. They leave some of the residual sugar. So the Rieslings that they're making here are world-class. Okay. And they're comparable with the Alsace region in France and Germany, the Weingut region. So yeah, we've got a bunch of Finger Lakes wines that are unbelievable. And they're $9-10 bottles of wine all day long. Great wines. Yeah. Great wines. And they're very food friendly. And they're food friendly for spicy foods, Thai food, Spanish cooking, because they cut through the spice. You get some super dry wines, they taste awful with spicy food. So a Riesling's a great call, Carolina, to have with spicy food. And they're just great wines to have. I would start every meal with an Alsatian white wine or a Riesling, absolutely.
Yeah. I think next time we're gonna meet everyone in Napa, no? With Matt.
Perfect. Yeah. Tell me when you guys want to go. Nothing would make me happier to have my brother with me, my brother Ernesto with me, and drinking up and down the Napa Valley.
I travel a lot to California, San Francisco, because the company that I work for is a headquarters is in Sunnyvale. So next time I will let you know. I'm happy to meet your
please do.
partner. Yes.
Absolutely. We'd like to look after you. Let us know. We'll get you taken care of, promise.
So please say bye to Matt. Matt, thank you very much.
Thanks, my friend.
Really appreciate it. Anything? I appreciate it. No?
Bye, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. It was very interesting.
Thank you, Anna. If you guys need anything, please let me know. Good luck, everybody. And, have me back. We'll talk about some other stuff whenever you want.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Matt.
Hope
to see you soon. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Ciao, Matt.